Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second day for communication. Yesterday, we talked about the basic elements of communication, different models of communication, and in types of communication, we discussed verbal, non-verbal, vertical, lateral, and diagonal communication. We ended on solving a few previous year questions. Moving on to the next question. So B and C are the answers that you have shared. The answer is actually A. So why A? Formal communication is a memo is given in an office for most probably for a mistake that has been done. Previous slide, please. This is the same slide that I have been showing, Shruti. Informal communication talks group chain. When we talk about grapevine, gossip, all of that is informal communication. Outward communication is when from a central authority, the message is passed on to other people. So when it comes to government agencies, a directive is sent from the head office to all the other lower level offices and employees. And inward communication is exactly the opposite of it. So a circular is sent only within a small group or a small office. It will not be something that would be shared to all the other places. A circular can be different for one office in a city and different for the other office, depending on the situations. But when it comes to government agencies, the rules are mostly decided from the center, a central body, and passed on to other places. So that's why it's outward communication. Okay. So the answer here is A. Aspects of voice other than the speech or the words are known as paralanguage, right? We discussed it already. The pitch, tone, clarity, and the rate with which you speak. Fast, slow. Communication through colors can result in aesthetic codes, cultural codes, semantic codes, binary codes. So choose what happens when we talk about the messages conveyed by choosing colors. D. So the answer is D, because aesthetics, when we talk about aesthetics, it is all about colors, and colors are also related to culture. Like in our culture, red represents celebration, red, pink, those kind of yellow, these vibrant colors. White signifies death or something that is not a good. The same goes for black, dark blue, right? We like our elders tell us that don't wear white or black on a good occasion. That's culture. Whereas if you see in Christianity, white is actually the color of celebration. Like for the wedding, they wear white. In China, again, that if you see the traditional wedding attire, it is red and golden. So culture-wise, the colors could have different meaning or different significance. So aesthetic codes and cultural codes, 1 and 2. So the answer is D. Which of this following signifies non-verbal communication in an essential way? Which of this is an example of non-verbal communication? So that's the question. Sometimes you will find that the language of the question is a bit confusing. So one trick would be just if you are well versed in Hindi, you could probably read, the Hindi translation given below. If you are stuck somewhere, see the dress code followed by an individual. Yes, because in all the other three options, words are used, whether it is written or oral. But in dress code, no words are used. So that's why that is non-verbal language. C is your answer. Sorry. Which of the following principles should be followed by a good communicator? He should stay organized. He should avoid the use of visuals. He should be authoritarian. He must adjust to whatever medium is there, and he should prefer the method of storytelling. Out of this, which are the three qualities of a good communicator? C, 2, 4, and 5. He should avoid the use of visuals. D. Okay. So the answer is actually D, because when we take a class, if using visuals, or here if I just read out the question without having it on the slide, it would be difficult for you. If I keep on repeating the question 2 or 3 times, you will not be able to remember all the options. But the use of visual actually helps when a good communicator is speaking. So an image, a table, or something that represents data, or just simple bullet points would obviously help. Being authoritarian is not okay, because then the flow of communication would be only one side. You will not be able to get feedback. So that is why 2 is also not an option. So the answer is 1, 4, and 5. The answer is D. When there is animated discussion between a teacher and his or her students in the classroom, it can be classified as what kind of communication? Would it be horizontal, mechanical, linear, or categorical? A, horizontal. When a teacher teaches students, it probably could be vertical communication or linear communication, right? But here, the key word is animated discussion. Animated is a lively discussion where both sides are participating with equal energy. Okay, so it's a kind of hot debate or hot discussion going on between teacher and student. In that, it is the contribution of both parties is almost at the same level, and in that situation, a teacher almost talks like a peer with the student when they are discussing things to and fro. It's not that the student is asked a doubt and the teacher is explaining. There's a discussion going on between both of them, and the use of word animated shows that to and fro a lot of arguments are being spoken. So that is why in this case, because the word animated discussion is given, it would be a horizontal communication. Okay, so as I said, classroom communication theory is not there much. It's knowing what happens in a classroom, understanding based on your experience as a student and as a teacher, and then applying the principles of communication. Those kind of questions are asked a lot along with teaching aptitude questions. A verbal communication technique used in teaching is, which of this could be used in teaching? Slow expression of words, varying speed of voice and tone, presentation without pause, and resorting to semantic jugglery. Semantic means related to words and its meaning. Jugglery is like when you have, three balls and the person is throwing one by one, catching, that is jugglery. So trickery. So the magic of words is being used. Um, Speaking lines of poem or speaking a one liner which is very impressive, that is called resorting to semantic jugglery. So when we talk about clarity of communication, which helps students understand the concepts well, varying the speed of voice and tone depending on the situation. Like when I start, my voice is high. If I don't vary my voice and tone, it will all be very flat, and you will not be able to understand where the pause is, what should be emphasized upon or not. Okay, still I cannot speak without a pause. So basically, we as teachers, we do vary our voice and tone. So that is important. Voice modulation, that is. Next, proxemics means what? What is the meaning of proxemics? What is included? Facial expressions, crowding, territoriality, personal space, eye contact. Which of this is a part of proxemics? So for that, you need to remember what proxemics is. All of these are part of non-verbal communication. Haptics, proxemics. Two, B, C, and D. Okay, so see, facial expressions is a part of kinesics. Kinesics is body language, facial expression, gestures, body posture, eye contact. That is a part of kinesics. Whereas proxemics is about space, how close you are, how far you are. So crowding, territoriality, that is, please do not come in my space, and personal space. These are the concepts related to proxemics. B, C, and D. So that's option number 2. Which of the following are identified as non-verbal practices of communication? Mimicking speeches, accent, posture, gait, dress. Three. C, D, and E. So speeches is again speaking, accent is a part of paralanguage, posture is the body posture, gait is the way you walk. The style of walking is called gait, and dressing is obviously. So our next topic is intercultural communication. It is a subtopic in type of communication only, but I just wanted to break it into parts so that it becomes easier to understand. So when we talk about communication between different cultures, what are the things that we should keep in mind? Or if when that, which means when questions related to culture or cultural communication are asked, what are the aspects that you should think of before determining your answer? So communication between people whose cultural perceptions and symbol systems differ significantly affect the communication styles. The term intercultural communication was coined by Edward T. Hall in The Silent Language, 1959. It is considered the foundational work of this field. What's the importance of this? Immigration and refugee flows, social interactions, global media and international relations. And nowadays we have students from a lot of Asian countries coming to India to study. So if you are someone who's teaching in college, then again intercultural communication, ability to understand the accent of those students again becomes very important. So what are the indicators of intercultural competence? So when we say that this person is good in cross-cultural communication or intercultural communication, what are the qualities of that person, or what are the qualities of that teacher? Tolerance of ambiguity. That is, ambiguity is confusion. But here we are not talking about confusion. What we are talking about is difference in values, traditions, and relationships. Your words could mean the different thing for that other person, and acceptance of that difference is what makes you a good intercultural communicator. Behavioral flexibility, goal orientation, sociability, and interest in knowing about others. Like when I was teaching in college, there were a lot students from a lot of different countries of Africa, and a few Asian countries also in my class. So one of them, when we, like after class, they were talking about, and he shared with me the history of Rwanda, the country he came from, the entire war that happened between Hutus and Tutus, which are the two clans there. And it's considered to be one of the biggest genocides that ever happened in the history of the world, which was hidden, and we got to know once satellites came. So when I came home and read about that, I realized that there's so much in the world that we don't know about. So that interest of knowing other person is again what helps intercultural communication. Just sharing an example so that you can remember these points. Empathy and non-judgmental attitude, meta communication skills. That is awareness of communication about communication. Being aware of all these indicators also shows that you are competent about it. And last is cultural sensitivity. Forget other countries. In India, we have so much of cultural difference. India is divided into North India, Central India, West, South. Then there's Kashmir portion, there's Northeast. Even in South, you have 4 different states with 4 varying cultures. When people of different states and different languages come together, then also all this is very important. And having students from different states, having colleagues from different states, when you have these qualities, it will help you. Okay, not just for studying or for UGC NET, but also in your life. Next, Hofstede's framework. What are the different cultural dimensions? First, power distance, acceptance of social inequality. Probably where the place you are, you might be in the majority group or you might be in the minority group. Like if I'm Gujarati and I'm in Gujarat, I'm in the majority group. But if I'm in MP, then I'm in the minority group. So acceptance that the other person or you, what's the power distance between both of you? What's your level of power in that situation? Acceptance of that. Second, individualism versus collectivism. Focus on self versus group. Femininity versus masculinity. Gender roles and values. They also differ from culture to culture. Uncertainty avoidance. That is, tolerance for ambiguity or the unknown. Because when you go to a new place, there could be a lot of new things. And when someone new comes to your place, there is a lot of unknown things happening for them also. So helping them out, settle down. Uncertainty avoidance. Long-term versus short-term orientation. Focus on future rewards versus immediate results. Immediately, there might be intercultural issues, but in the long term, you need to focus on the reason why you probably shifted. Or that's what it means. High context versus low context. That is how much communication is clearly said to you and how much is not said, but probably you experience and slowly realize, oh God, this happens. Like in Navratri, because I'm in MP, what happens in Gujarat, we have 9 days of Garba. That's a given. Every society, every colony. Here in Indore, what surprised me was every colony has its own Ravan Dahan on the Shera. Okay, we don't have that in Gujarat. So in every, like, there's so many effigies of Ravan being sold on the roads everywhere, and it's such a big festival here. So like when you experience it, you realize no one comes and tells you, but then when you see it, you realize, oh, this is the thing. So having that sensitivity or to understand what is clearly told to you, what is not clearly told to you. Okay, that is high context versus low context. Ethnocentrism versus cultural relativism. Now, knowing these terms is important so that if you get questions where these words are used, you are able to answer them. That's the purpose here. Ethnocentrism is belief that one's own culture is superior and standard for others. Cultural relativism is belief that all cultures are equally valid and no culture should impose values on others. You need to remember the meaning of these words. Political tendencies, conservatives are people who believe that their own culture is better, and liberals are those who believe that all cultures are equal. Again, importance here is on learning the meaning of the terms. Goal, move from ethnocentrism to ethno-relativism. That, of course, like from the belief that whatever is my culture is the best to the fact that all cultures are equal, and mine is best and yours is also best. Okay, acceptance of cultural differences. That is called that is important for intercultural communication. Thinking styles, again, two more new terms to know. Analytical thinking focuses on objects, details, cause, effect, and logic. This is more common in Western cultures. By Western, I mean European and North American cultures. Holistic thinking, focus on relationships, context, accepting contradictions and changes. This is more common in Eastern cultures, like the Asian cultures. Okay. So far, I'm not sensing any comments, so I'm assuming that these are topics that most of us can know and relate. It's just that you should be aware of the terms. High context cultures, okay, where communication relies on shared knowledge, implicit cues, direct verbal messages may be seen as unnecessary or rude. There is emphasis on harmony or politeness. Okay, like we give a lot of respect and politeness, and instead of going to the main thing, we create a long story around it, because directly saying things or directly asking for it is considered rude. Like yes, I was watching an advertisement in which they were it was advertisement for some flour mill. So the neighbor comes and says that my son does not like to eat food using the flour that I have. So can you please give your flour to me? Your flour is very good and you are my good neighbor. So instead of saying that I want to borrow some flour, atta, from you, there's this huge story which is created. ओके कि मेरे आटे के पराठे इतने अच्छे नहीं बनते जैसे आपके आटे के बनते, तो आप थोड़ा देंगे, आप तो हमारे अच्छे पड़ोसी है. That's exactly how the wording goes in Hindi. So this is high context culture. A lot of storytelling happens and directly the message is not given. Low context cultures. Communication is explicit, direct, and detailed. Clarity is the key. Responsibility is on the sender for clear messaging. तो भाई सीधे सीधे बताओ क्या हुआ, whatever has happened, speak directly, no round and round. Okay. Self-enhancement versus self-effacement. Self-enhancement is common in individualistic, low-context cultures. Like many Western countries, here it is not said all, an emphasis on that. Nowadays, I don't think this applies. Okay, in the world of internet, the cultural differences are slowly being obliterated. I know a lot of people in Western countries, born and brought up there in those cultures, who are much more interested in self-enhancement than even I am. Okay. So emphasis on promoting one's own self-esteem and efficacy. Individuals are direct, expressive, and open about their achievements. This is one point that is still different. They clearly talk about their achievements and abilities, whereas in Eastern cultures like Japan and China, people don't speak up their strengths. Even for us, we are told to play down our strengths in our childhood. Don't tell people it's bragging. But nowadays, bragging is important if you want to get promotions. So people hesitate to openly discuss their own strengths and their achievements, and to maintain group harmony and avoid offending others. They usually do that. That if I start saying that, others will feel that I'm bragging, and it will probably disrupt the harmony of the team. Tendency towards self-criticism and humbleness. Being humble is called humility. Okay. Examples may be important if example-based questions are asked. The point here is to understand the terms self-enhancement and self-effacement. Okay. Self-effacement is like criticizing oneself, being more humble, that I still have a lot to grow. I'm not as good as you are. That is self-effacement. Elaboration. French, Arabs, Latin Americans, and Africans. The communication involves verbal exaggeration and rich details, like using over assertion, repeatedly saying the same thing to emphasize it. That is called elaboration. And understating. It is spoken or given importance less than required. Heavy use of silence, pauses, and understatement. Silence is also used as a conflict management tool to calm emotions and strategize while silence is being there. Okay. So you can consider it as more use of words versus less use of words. But it's not as simple as that. What are the things that you should do to improve intercultural communication? Finally, pay attention to your own words and actions. These steps are important to know so that if you get them in options, you can choose which ones are important or related to intercultural communication and which are not. That's the purpose of this. Pay attention to your own words and actions. Control your assumptions about others. Engage in transpection. That is understanding the other person. Introspection is understanding your own self. Transpection is understanding people across. Gain knowledge about other cultures. Gain experience through interaction and exposure. Okay. So paying attention to words and actions, controlling your assumptions, and trying to understand others, learn about them, gain knowledge about them, and gain experience by interacting with them. Okay. It is said that the more countries you travel, the more knowledgeable you become and the more humble you become, because you realize the richness of different cultures across the world. I don't know how true it is. Miscellaneous 2-3 topics which I couldn't categorize anywhere. Communication through emoticons. Nowadays, I told you the latest trends are being asked as questions. Okay, what's the current mass media? What is a lot of questions related to internet and stuff like that. So I thought this is also important. So emoticon is emotion plus icon. It shows writers' feelings via facial symbols. So if you remember, initially emoticons used to be like this in SMSs till WhatsApp and things came. It was used first by Scott Fallman in 1982 to mark jokes online. Created using ASCII. ASCII is the word for the numbers, letters, alphabets in computer. Pictograms, Shift GIS in Unicode art. Emoji. Emoticon is emotion plus icon. Emoji is the Japanese for picture. The E and character is moji. So picture character is emoji. It represents faces, objects, and symbols used in emails, chats, forums, WhatsApp, everywhere nowadays to a tone, meaning, and social connection. Words can be bland when conveyed written. So that is why sending a smiley gives context to it, whether it is happy or sad. See,
ma'am, can we just go to the previous slide? I had a question.
Yes. Yes, please ask.
Here, this Japanese for picture is there, ma'am. What is that particular word? Japanese, is it mean that country, or is it having a something?
Language.
Japanese language.
This is the source of the word emoji, root, like how it was formed. Emoji is not the short form of emoticon. Emoji is the Japanese word for emoticons. This is just information in case it helps. You never know what kind of questions come in exam these days.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so what are the important points that you need to consider when you talk about emoticons? Serve as contextual cues and support written interaction. They are seen as visual body language in digital communication because emotions show expressions, right? So it's non-verbal, but it's non-verbal communication, but in the form of written or communication. Women use emoticons more frequently than men. It was a 1995 study, and it's been 30 years since that, so we don't know anymore. May help reduce flaming or hostile responses in chats because you don't know what context the other person understands. So sharing a smiley with it makes the other person understand that you are speaking it out of politeness and not out of anger or irritation. Excessive use may suggest emotional immaturity or poor control. So excessive use is also not good. Okay. It shows that there's lack of emotional maturity. Just like excessive body language shows emotional immaturity. Next is speech act theory. So it differentiates between constitutives. What are constitutives? Statements, which could be either true or false, and performatives, like an action. Okay, so constitutives are statements and performatives are actions in form of statements. So these are not verbs, but like complete statements showing actions. I apologize. Okay, you can remember it as noun and verbs, but in statement forms. But these are not noun and verbs. Okay, constitutives are statements and performatives are, okay, this is a book, is a constitutive. The book is walking is a performative. Every utterance has 3 levels. Everything that is spoken in a speech has 3 levels. Locutionary, whatever the actual speech is there. Illocutionary, whatever is the intention behind that speech. So when I say the statement, whatever is the intention behind that speech, that is locutionary. My intention behind it is to explain the previous statement. So that is my intention. Explanation, that is illocutionary. And perlocutionary is whatever is the effect happening on the listener. So whatever effect happens on you, whether you understand, whether you get confused, that is perlocutionary. Locutionary, illocutionary, perlocutionary. Okay, that is the speech act theory. There are 5 kinds of speeches. We are learning this so that if these words come as options, you know the meaning. That's the only purpose. Directives. Directives to give direction to someone. Request, command. Okay. Expressives are expression of your feelings. Thanking, apologizing. Commissives. Commitment, promising, vowing something. I vow to help you out, something that way. And representatives are Statements, facts. The sun rises in the east, that way. Declarations, appointing someone, resigning someone, changing someone's social status to declare that India is now an independent country. That's a declaration. Directives, expressives, commissives, representatives, and declarations. 5 kinds of speeches are there. So what I'm saying right now are all representatives. But when I say solve this question, it's a directive. And the last in miscellaneous is politeness theory, developed by Brown and Levinson, which says that language should be used respectfully. It shows etiquette, manners, and social sensitivity. It is linked to hedging. What is hedging? It modifies the speech without changing the logic. So saying that, give me the book and please give me the book. The logic remains the same, but now there's etiquette. The please is added to it. Strengtheners boost the meaning. Really, definitely. Whereas softeners tone down the impact. Maybe, I'm not sure. When you say a flaming, raging statement and say maybe, I'm not sure, it tones it down a little bit. Okay? Do I look good today? Yes, definitely you look good today. So when you say yes, you look good versus definitely, it keeps the meaning same, but it strengthens it. Okay? So Brown and Levinson is what you need to remember. Hedging and 2 kinds of hedging. Next topic is group communication. Okay. So group communication has different parts, like what are the different kinds of group communication, different types of grapevine communication, and different kinds of leaderships in groups. What is a group? A set of individuals with common goals, interacting and recognizing each other as members. More than one individuals, common goals, interacting with each other, and they recognize each other as members. Family, work, social, cultural, religious, all these kinds of groups are there in our lives. Group communication is a form of interpersonal communication. So when we learned types of communication and we talked about intrapersonal and interpersonal communication, right after that this topic comes. But there's so much data in this topic that I decided to take it separately because again, it's very important. A lot of questions have been asked based on either grapevine or leadership. And a classroom is also where group communication happens. So from that context also, this topic is important. Primary groups are groups which are intimate and have face-to-face relationships. Whereas where you don't have very intimate or close relationships, they are called secondary groups, like your workplaces or institutions. So maybe students, 5-6 students in a class are a group of friends. So that's the primary group. The rest of the classmates are their secondary group. Okay. Other kinds of classifications could be, just a moment. Other kinds of classifications could be statistical, societal, social, associational. So if you're a part of association, if you're part of a society or a community. What are the characteristics of a group? Dependence, acceptance, attraction, volition. That is voluntary participation. From starting itself, a group of people is called a group. There is pressure, what we call peer pressure, pressure to conform to the norms of the group. If your group is where people smoke, then you would be pressurized to smoke. If your group is of a people who do not smoke and you are the only one who does that, you will be pressurized to quit smoking. Change and flexibility. Groups evolve over time. You don't stay where you are. When you were in fourth standard and you were a group of 4 friends, with the time, you also become mature, your dynamics also become mature, and the number of people in the group can also change. Leadership is again a characteristic of a group. A leader is someone who guides behavior and tasks. It could be a formal leader, it could be an informal leader. Like in our workplaces, we have formal leaders, someone who's given the position of HOD. In our friend circle, there's usually one person whom people follow a lot. So without getting the tag of leader, that person is a leader. What are the influencing factors? Age, gender, education, language, culture, region, race, religion, socioeconomic status. All these factors affect how groups are formed. Also, the dynamics of the group, the balance of interaction seen in dyads or 2% doesn't hold when it comes to larger groups. Because between 2 people, the interaction is different. Now you had 4-5 people, their interaction together would be very different. Ideal size for effective interaction is 5 to 7 members. This has been researched by Baker. Okay, and there are committees are also form of groups. Committees are formed with specific purposes. Benefits of group: promotes direct interaction, encourages attitude and belief change, enhances participation and information sharing. So far, going clear? Everyone? Because I'm speaking a lot of theory, so just, we all know this. It's just that when you listen to it this way, you become aware of how groups operate. Leadership styles. Leadership styles is again a favorite topic in UGC NET questions. Not in every paper, but it has been common. Democratic leadership, participative and inclusive. So democracy, India is a democratic country, right? So everyone participates, everyone gives vote, everyone expresses their opinion. So democratic leadership is participative and inclusive of everyone. It encourages group discussion and decision making. Leader seeks inputs from the members, but of course the leader makes the final decision. It promotes creativity, collaboration, and member satisfaction. So in our parliament, input is sought from everyone, things are discussed, but then there are some decisions which are taken by the leader, the prime minister, or the speaker of the parliament. When it comes to running the parliament, or when it comes to country, the prime minister takes a decision, but input is sought from everyone. But there's also this that if the prime minister loses the support of majority, then elections happen again. The government needs to be changed. So that is democratic leadership, suitable for skilled and motivated teams. So now coming from the level of country to coming to the level of a group of 5 or 7 people, where people are skilled, talented, and motivated to work hard, this kind of leadership goes very well. When you don't need to push someone to work, or there are no slackers or people who get lost or confused with work. Authoritarian. The leader makes decision independently. There's discipline, there are rules, there's hierarchy, your login time, your logout time, how much work you have done today, what classes you have taken, how is this done well or not, show me your registers. Authoritarian leadership. Communication is top down. The leader makes decision, conveyed to the people below, and they have to follow it. Efficient in crisis or structured environments. But the morale of the team can be lower. Group members are expected to follow orders without any question. That is authoritarian leadership. Authority. It comes from the word authority. Next is laissez-faire leadership. This word does not come from English, but I guess probably French. Let it be is the meaning of it. It's hands-off style. Let it be. There's minimal guidance or interference from the leader. Team members are given freedom to make decisions. Works well with highly creative or self-motivated individuals. Can lead to lack of direction if the team lacks discipline. Now, there's one question asked that in certain kind of, like in classrooms, what kind of leaderships works well? So the teacher should be, the answer is that the teacher has to be laissez-faire leadership, because if they get too involved, then it hampers the creativity of students. You should ensure that the homework is done. That's it. Baki apna khud se karo. If you start getting involved in their project, even though they don't want you to get involved, then it becomes a problem if you become too authoritarian. Okay, so now the roles of a leader in a group can be classified in two ways: task oriented, and the second is maintenance roles. So what are the task oriented roles? Focus on achieving the group's goals. These could be either initiating, someone who initiates discussions and ideas, or someone who informs, shares facts, data, relevant info, someone who clarifies the doubts of people, someone who keeps the group on track, orientation and focused, that we have only 5 days to complete the task. Summarizes. After the discussions are at an end, they summarize and finalize that these are the decisions that we have taken. Keep in mind, this needs to be done and submitted in this manner. Test consensus. Check if the entire group is ready to decide or is agreeing on something. These are task-oriented roles of a leader: to initiate, inform, clarify, orient, summarize, and test consensus. Maintaining the group, maintaining the harmony and peace in the group. Support, affirm others' ideas, encourage the members, compromise. When two people are fighting, help them find some neutral place, middle ground. Gatekeep, ensure balanced participation from all. If one person is being silent, then you need to tell them, please speak up. And if one person is being too loud or not letting others speak, then stop them and say, please give others a chance. Set the standards, the norms and the expectations, because people look up to the leader. So the leader sets the standards which the members look up to. So the maintenance rules are support, encourage, compromise, gatekeep, and set standards. Now, what are the communication barriers in groups? These communication barriers in groups are also the overall communication barriers, okay, not just for groups. So when we come to communication barriers topic, you will know ethnocentrism, believing that my group is the best, or my idea or my culture or what I do is the best. That leads to judging of others. So once you start judging someone, communication gets filtered and comes to you. Mutual understanding gets hindered. Second is stereotyping. Women can't keep a secret. Men always cheat. These are stereotypes. Both of them are wrong. I know of men who can't keep secrets and women who cheat. So stereotyping is wrong. Ignores individual differences and can cause misinterpretation and biased expectations. Prejudice, negative attitude towards a person. It is based on stereotypes and emotional bias, or probably a previous experience that someone has shared to you and you have already formed an opinion about someone without your own experience, without knowing the context in which those things happened. Discrimination. When you act based on the prejudice, that is discrimination, unfair treatment, exclusion, or marginalization of someone. It destroys the trust and cohesion within the group. So the 4 barriers to communication are ethnocentrism, stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination. The strategies to overcome these barriers. So now, how do you overcome them? Assimilation. Minority group adopts the dominant group's norms and values, promotes uniformity, but it could lead to loss of cultural identity. Accommodation. Mutual respect for the differences, that is another way you can overcome the barrier. Both groups make adjustments to coexist peacefully. I do mine, you do yours. I respect yours, you respect mine, that way. So this encourages diversity and inclusiveness. Separation. Groups choose to maintain their distinct identity. There's minimal interaction. It may reduce the conflict on a short-term basis, but it limits collaboration and shared understanding. So this is not a long-term solution. Again, when it comes to group communication, there are some important aspects which are keywords whose meaning we should know. So when this come as options in exams, we are able to answer the question. What is cohesion in a group? The emotional bonding between them. High cohesion, stronger commitment, better collaboration. It leads to more satisfaction and productivity. So cohesion is the emotional bonding between members of the group. What are group norms? Group norms are unwritten rules that people in the group follow. Every day at 4 p.m., all of us go to the canteen to have sandwich or tea or coffee. Is the unwritten rule of the group. Group norm. Establish what is acceptable or unacceptable. Unacceptable. We can gossip about other people, but not the members of the group. Group norm. Just to give an example. You shouldn't gossip. But we'll learn about that also. Helps to maintain order and predictability in interactions, because you know what are the rules of your group. They are not written, but you are aware of it. So you know how to behave. Where is the limit? Next, group roles. We talked about task-based leadership, right? What are the tasks of a leader? Similarly, all the group members have certain functions. If they are, if it's a formal working environment, your titles tell what function you do. And if it's an informal environment, then there's someone whose job is to encourage other people, someone whose job is to criticize others, someone whose job is to organize events, someone whose job is to find out where there's best food, that way. So specific functions or responsibilities assigned to team members. If it's an informal group, then probably based on your interest. Group dynamics. The kind of interaction that happens between group members. Power, influence, communication patterns. This plays very important role. The group dynamics plays very important role. Don't just think about friends group. We are also talking about workplace groups. We are also talking about how students in a classroom operate. It affects decision making, conflict resolution, and cohesion. Groupthink. When the desire for harmony overrides critical thinking. So when you know that whatever everyone is thinking is wrong, but just to ensure that the group is harmonious, you leave a better idea and agree to a poor decision. So that is groupthink, often caused by pressure to conform. Social loafing. Social loafing is when a member contributes less to a group than they would individually. Slacking off, okay, caused by diffusion of responsibility. Why should I do everything? They say this statement and then don't do anything. This can be reduced by clear roles, accountability, and motivation, especially in formal groups. Okay, and if you are someone whose students have to do group projects, you would know that it takes so much of time of teachers in solving the problems that happen in a group. Two people are working more on the project, two people are not working, and there's always a fight that we need more marks than them or remove them from the group. We will not share the responsibilities and all those kind of stuff. So that's all about group communication. Now, one kind of group communication is also grapevine communication, informal, unofficial information that runs spontaneously. It spreads very quickly, but may lack accuracy. Spreads quickly, lacks accuracy, there's high possibility. So about about grapevine, it is said that 5 sparrows were killed becomes 500 houses were burned when it passes through the entire grapevine channel. But it is still common in workplaces and social groups. The kinds of grapevine communication. Single strand chain. Information passes sequentially from one person to the next. A tells B, B tells C, and so on. It is very slow and can distort the message with each link. Gossip chain. One person tells a lot of different people. A tells to B, C, D separately. A goes to B and tells. Then A goes to C and tells. A goes to D and tells. So one person shares personal or sensational information with many others. This happens when the information is interesting to everyone. Probability chain. Randomly passed and randomly it continues. It's not that it goes from A to B to C or from A to everyone else. Randomly it is passed on. Cluster chain is when A tells to B, C, D. Now B goes and tells to 4 more people. C goes and tells to 4 more people. One person tells a selected few. Now each of them goes and tells selected few more. This is the most common type of grapevine in offices. It is fast, can reach a large audience, but it also distorts the facts very quickly. Okay. So that is all about types of communication, intercultural and group communication. A small topic before we start solving questions. Barriers to communication. Okay, we talked about it, so just okay. So what are the different barriers to communication? Barriers of communication can be of 5 types. Psychological barriers, linguistic and cultural barriers, mechanical barriers, organizational barriers, and physical barriers. What are psychological barriers? Everything that happens in your mind. When someone is talking to you, you are judging them, and whatever they are saying, you are not accepting it. Or you are probably thinking, how much of this can be true? How much of this can be false? What should I reply to this person? How can I overpower this person? I don't trust. Such kind of things when you're talking, he or she always talks like that. These are all psychological barriers. When a stranger is saying, should I believe him? Should I trust him? How true is it? How false it is? And I'm not saying this is wrong every time, but then these barriers distort the complete meaning coming to you. So what are the psychological barriers? Frame of reference is how your personal experiences have happened in your life. So when I say honesty is the best policy, after that your mind will say, but I know how much do I have to pay to become honest. Mujhe nahi banna Harishchandra. Okay, so that is your frame of reference. Self-image. When you are feeling lowest self-esteem, then it may hinder open and confident communication to and fro. You might not be able to speak up what you want to in front of your boss. Stereotyping. Prejudging others and field of experience. When you come from different backgrounds, if someone has worked in a college and someone has worked in a school, they have very different experience of dealing with students. So then when both of them sit together to make a decision or share opinions, then your field of experience can become a barrier. if you are not open to learning new things. Cognitive dissonance, conflicting beliefs. When one person believes that you should not wear shoes inside the house and the other person believes that shoes can be worn inside the house, that is conflicting beliefs. Just an example. In India, we have dust, so we cannot wear shoes inside the house. But in countries where there is snow and no dust, they can. But if you don't understand the context, then it becomes cognitive dissonance. Defensiveness and fear, fear of judgment or conflict, blocks honest dialogue. Selective perception. You hear what you want to, leave the rest out. So when someone says that you should pray to God every day and you should not stay hungry, you forget the first part and you focus on the second part, that you should not stay hungry. Just an example, okay? With due respect to all atheists. That is selective perception. And last is filtering. Taking out a meaning that you want from the words of the other person. Like what we do with voices of our religious scriptures, which were written years ago. Now we no longer know the correct meaning, so everyone has their own interpretation of it. Next is linguistic and cultural barriers. Semantic, the words that you use, the differences of the culture, okay, what kind of culture it is. Different meanings of words cause confusion, varying communication styles. Someone who speaks with a lot of emphasis, repeating things again versus someone who prefers silence. Cross-cultural barrier, cultural differences can create misunderstandings. The third is mechanical barriers, the size of the language, perpetual biases, impersonal relationships, and cultural differences. Okay, so if the vocabulary is limited, like if I had to express something in Gujarati or Hindi, my vocabulary is way more in those two languages as compared to English, because English is a language that I use only for work. And for a lot of emotions, I feel that English does not have sufficient words. Maybe it has, but it does not resonate with my heart the way it does in my mother tongue or in Hindi. So then limited vocabulary would restrict expression. Perpetual biases, constant exposure to biased information, which is what media are doing these days. It distorts understanding and of what is actually happening. Impersonal relationships. If you are not connected to the other person, you will not listen to them. Why would you even listen to a stranger? That's a mechanical barrier. And cultural differences. Different values, different customs affect how messages are received. Next is organizational barriers. Workplace. For all the employees. As educators, we are still employees somewhere, right? So bigger organizations, bigger the communication gap. Smaller the organization, easier it is to communicate. Size, distance, physical separation. If you connect on Zoom face-to-face, that is still better. But otherwise, if you're just sending emails to each other, the communication will be distorted. Specialization, jargons, domain-specific terms. Okay, I don't know, what example should I give in that? I know IT people use a lot of jargons, those meaning I do not understand. That happens when I meet a lot of my family members who are in IT. Even doctors have their own jargon. When doctors start speaking, for the rest of the people, it becomes difficult to understand what they are talking about. Now, if I say that nowadays, the people know that hypertension means blood pressure, but still, if you start talking about angina and palpitations, maybe. So jargon-specific terms confuse people who do not belong to that domain. There are also terms specific to an organization. People of other colleges or organizations would not be able to understand what you are saying. Culture of the organization and rules and regulations. And the last is physical barriers. So what are the physical barriers? Oh, there are four more. That's what the list udhar itna lamba kyun hai? Let's complete organizational barriers before moving forward. Power structure, how much power the leader has and how much do the employees have to listen. We all know. Complexity. Again, bigger the organization, more the complexity of tasks. And if it's an interdepartmental project, bhuli jao. Facilities, lack of tools or platforms, obstructs communication and lack of cooperation. If you have decided you're not going to cooperate with the members of the other department, no communication can help you out. The last one is physical barriers. When there's a background noise or distraction, actual physical noise or uncomfortable surroundings, or there's stress. When you are stressed already with something, you might not be able to listen effectively. And medium unfamiliarity. For someone who does not know how to operate Google Meet, they'll be stuck in case something happens and they get logged out. So that can also cause miscommunication. Like when probably you first started using WhatsApp, you might not have known how the typing happens, or when the first time, I know a lot of people who by mistake send voice notes on WhatsApp. It's just of 1 or 2 seconds, but they press it and they release it and they send it because they are still learning how to use WhatsApp. So medium unfamiliarity. All of this become barriers to communication. So how do you overcome them? Regulate the flow of information, small amounts, encourage feedback, ask people if things are clear or not. So are things clear so far? Are things clear so far? Are you listening to me, guys? Yes, you are. Thank you, Revati. And then use simple language. Try to make things as simple as possible, which is my biggest attempt when it comes to teaching logical reasoning. Match the receiver's level of knowledge. Speak in a way that the other person can understand. Listen actively. Focus fully on the speaker. Avoid distractions, judgment, prejudices. All of this should be kept on side. Control your emotions. If you are feeling angry, irritated, if your adrenaline is running high, take a break. Don't immediately answer. Delay the communication so that there's no misinterpretation of your intention. And observe the non-verbal cues, body language. Body language will give you more information than the words can. Okay. So we talked about noise as a physical barrier. What is noise? Something that disrupts communication, external or internal. External noise is the voice that you hear outside. Probably something like this. If this sound is there, it's an external noise. And when our mind keeps on chattering with stereotypes and prejudices, that is internal noise. And there's stress, there's misunderstanding. Reduced noise has to be reduced or eliminated for effective communication. What are the different kinds of noise? 4 types. Physiological. When you are hungry, you won't be able to understand. So as your cameras are off, if you are hungry, you can munch something on the side. I know at the end of a day when you have worked hard, you get hungry, you get fatigued, right? Illness, headache, there's effect of medicine. All of this is called physiology. Physiology is how your body system runs. So all the distractions based on that are called physiological noise. Physical noise is the external disturbances, the actual sound, traffic, music, other people talking. Psychological noise is your mental noise, and semantic noise is when the language is confusing, when the words are unclear. So if you hear a song in Spanish and you don't know Spanish, then that becomes a barrier in understanding the meaning. So that's semantic noise. but I would rather call it language barrier than noise if you're trying to understand those words. Okay. So let's solve the questions. Which of the following are barriers to effective communication? Physical noise, semantic noise, psychological noise, non-semantic noise. We just did that in the previous slide, right? This was a question that has been asked. So there's nothing called non-semantic noise. So that leaves out the option 4. So your answer is B. Non-content behaviors such as rate of speaking, loudness, tendency to interrupt, and pronunciation peculiarities. What is that called? What kind of behavior? Extrapersonal, animated, extra-linguistic, involuntary. Extra-linguistic behavior is another word for paralanguage. Okay? Semantic barrier is implied when signal is lost before reaching the receiver, message transmitted by the source is unclear, receiver's attention is diverted, or the receiver does not understand the meaning of the message. Meaning of the message. Semantic is always related to meaning of the words. Which of the following will help overcome communication barriers? Focus listening, neglecting semantic noise, top-down command structure, use of cliched idioms. So the answer is A, focused listening. Now, neglecting semantic noise would mean you probably wouldn't understand if those semantic noise is actually words that you are trying to understand. Since most interactions with other people take place at a highly superficial level, making good dash becomes difficult. You need to use a bit of brains for this question. And it has been asked, okay, previously. Announcements, predictions. What about deeds and course corrections? Anyone for A and C? Okay. So here the keyword is highly superficial level. When they are talking about superficial interactions, most interactions that you have in a day-to-day basis would be on a very like here when they are saying highly superficial level, it means they are not talking about family or people you know or with whom you can sit and have a longer conversation. So when the words highly superficial level is used, that means these are talking about interactions which are not deep. So when the interactions are not deep, making good dash becomes difficult. You can make announcements to people you don't know from the stage. Yes. Making good deeds, you can help people you don't know. When we do charity, we don't know whom we are helping. Making good course corrections. Now, if they are talking about syllabus here, that does not matter. You can always help when you see something, you can help a person out technically, even if you don't know them well. But making good predictions would become difficult if you don't know them. So that is why. So see, here there are 4 levels of communication, okay? Social or superficial level, where you talk about day-to-day affairs with strangers, where making any kind of prediction is not possible. let's say we talk about a plumber or a carpenter, or someone's asking direction to your house, or even with a neighbor that you don't know much, you say hi, hello, how are you doing? And when you meet on the jogging track in the garden and walk off, you wouldn't be able to make predictions about their behavior. At a mental level, you talk about ideas, plans, facts, strategies. This mostly happens in professional work. Emotional level is when you talk about your wants, needs, fears, joys, and this happens with friends, relatives, people very close to us. And spiritual level is a deep, direct connection with no distortion from social, mental, or emotional barriers or noise. So that is a spiritual level. So mental, emotional, and spiritual levels involve understanding and perceiving of the other person. So predictions are easy, but at superficial level, predictions are not easy. Okay, so these are the 4 levels of communication. Now let's go and solve the previous questions that we changed to. Yeah. When a large number of students with different performance levels are there in the class. Okay. Large number of students with different performance levels are there in the class. For uniform imparting of educative interactions, a teacher should opt for communication, which is, what kind of communication should be there? Top-down and linear, technology-enabled, individual-centric, self-projected. Individual-centric, large number of students is there in the class. Please focus on that. In a class with large number of students, that's your keyword. Uniform imparting of educative interactions using technology would be the most helpful. Okay? Because if we assume that the screen is big, then everyone can see it. When can top-down and linear would be helpful when there are multiple levels of hierarchy. Okay? Classroom teaching is only at the teacher and the student, only 2 levels. So top-down and linear does not work there. And individual-centric communication may challenge the teacher to ensure that every student has received the information. Now, how would you ensure that when the class size is large? So some might be able to receive information, some might lag behind. And when there is self-projected communication, then teacher might not be able to reach the last benchers, or some students might not, copy from the blackboard or stuff like that could happen. Especially because we are talking about a large class. Okay? You must have experienced it if the class is very large. The term grapevine is also called downward, informal, upward, horizontal. What's the synonym for grapevine? What kind of communication? Informal. Right. Okay. So here, this downward and upward communication is formal communication. And I guess so is horizontal. So vertical and horizontal are types of formal communication. Okay. Next, organizational communication is dash in nature. Imagine we are talking about a team here, or in an organization, or teams, hierarchies are there in organizations. Now, what kind of communication would help? Applied. That's the answer. Why applied? Because it affects how the organization functions. Okay, that is why. Here we have again match set A with set B. 4 terms in list A. Their features are given in list. the second list. You have to match them and choose the correct option. Okay, so here the answer is not 3, it's 4. So verbal communication has words in it, so that is speaking. And non-verbal is body language. So in how many options you have A as 3, A with 3 and C with 4? Forget the other two. Now, insufficient knowledge would obviously be a barrier. So that leaves us with knowledge and skills, which goes with effective communication. In match A with B, you need to know one thing for sure. But if you know one option, that these two are definitely a pair, then you can eliminate usually 2 options based on that. Okay. So because this is related to communication, I have taken it here. But like Jainism and Buddhism is also taught as a part of logical reasoning. So maybe, but I found this with communication questions in a sequence in the question paper. So let's consider it communication. According to Buddhism, linguistic communication should be used to adopt moral stance. Critical introspection is not preferred by Buddhists as part of intrapersonal communication. Are both of them true? Are both of them false? Or either only one is true, one is false? Okay. So when you think about Buddhism, meditation is intrapersonal communication, or they introspect and try to look at their own flaws. So statement 2 is incorrect. Now we have 2 options where statement 2 is incorrect. So then you need to think moral stance. Do they ask to adopt moral stance? Yes. So then our answer has to be 3. This question has also been asked. Buddhism contains a well-developed model of which kind of communication? Business communication, mass communication, interpersonal communication, organizational communication. So if intrapersonal was given, that would have been my first choice. But as intrapersonal is not given, then my second best choice would be interpersonal. Okay. This one. Are the students more cooperative, competitive, authoritative, or passive? When the leaders let it go, the student says, okay, the teacher says, okay, do as you like. The students would be more cooperative. The teacher is still the leader, but not very authoritative. Okay, so the students are more cooperative. This was a question which has been asked about poor leadership styles identified by Bill Redden, which is what I was talking about yesterday, that I couldn't find this anywhere in the top leadership classifications which are used in the world. So the answer here is this: related, integrated, dedicated, and separated. 4 kinds of leaderships. So related is team-based cooperative working. Okay, they do not dictate orders. Integrated is where cooperative nature is there, and there's two-way communication between the leader and the members. Okay, dedicated is this leader is truly concerned with the end result of the task, improving the production process. They retain the power and responsibility. They responsibly work on the project, but they also maintain the power to dictate roles and requirements. Separated. Separated is a manager who focuses on correcting deviations from the norm. They formulate policies, rules, and impose them on others, but they do not take a direct commanding role themselves. That is a separated leader. So these were the four kind of leadership styles identified by Bill Reddin. And if you just search leadership styles by Bill Reddin, you will be able to find it out. Okay. So these completes our topic of types of communication. We have 30 minutes in which we will discuss as many previous year questions as possible from classroom communication, like application of communication principles in the classroom. And tomorrow we'll take mass media, which will be our last and the most important topic. Okay, just give me a moment to change the presentation. Before we start, if someone had any doubt in any previous questions or slides, you can ask and we can move forward. No? Then we are moving forward. So Cole and Chan model of classroom communication is specifically a part of this topic. It has 5 stages. The aim is to transfer knowledge, cognitive domain like comprehension, analysis, application. The first stage is formulation of the message. Okay, here. So in this model, this circular arrows, this green arrows are not there. I have added them so that you can know where to look for. Because at first glance, you wouldn't understand where to start. So you start here with the up in the center in the middle. You just give me a moment. Okay, you start here with the sender receiver. Okay, there's formulation of the message. The message is encoded. It is transmitted to the receiver. There's formulation of the message and decoding. Now here, if there is feedback, then that is transmitted. Again, on the other side also, the same process happens. This is what we learned in communication models yesterday, right? So just like that, this model says that the first stage is formulation of message. It starts with an idea to influence the receiver. In this case, the student depends on the communicator's clarity, skills, and purpose, and influenced by McLuhan's medium is the message, which was a question also that we solved yesterday. Message encoding, converting ideas into understandable symbols like words, visuals. If you are using a PPT, then that's a visual, if whatever you are speaking. It also depends on receiver's comprehension. Like for someone who cannot read words, then you have to speak to them. Using PPT wouldn't help unless you are showing them images. Okay. Teachers tailor the content as per the subject and the learners. So that is message encoding. Message transmission. Selecting what channels to share message, verbal, non-verbal, written, multimedia. Teachers often integrate multiple channels, like they talk and they use visual aid, like I'm doing right now. And the fourth and the fifth stage are, now once the message goes to the receiver interprets the message using their prior knowledge of the language and the context. It is an active process and it depends on listening, reading, and thinking ability of the receiver. Receiver is the key link in the communication success, because if the receiver is not able to understand the message in the classroom model, then that's a problem. Okay, no one complained that that's better. Okay. So, and the last is feedback and evaluation. Receiver's response. When I say, did you understand? And the response that you gives me shows that so far whatever I am saying is clear to the other person. Helps communicator, in this case the teacher, adjust and improve communication, go fast, go slow, explain something again, or maybe teach something very fast and go to another point which has more weightage. Interactive feedback loop. When there is class discussion, now this role can become reverse. The student speaks and the teacher listens. That is also possible when class discussions. So these are the 5 stages: formulation of message, message encoding, message transmission, message decoding and interpretation, feedback and evaluation. Okay. Communication has the power to inform, persuade, and misinform. Propaganda blurs the thin line between truth and falsehood to be persuasive. Oh, come on. I've done this also here. Yes. Okay. Let's start with here. Sorry, that question is supposed to come tomorrow. Instructional communication in the distance education mode is unstructured, self-regulatory, informal, structured, and interactive. So in distance education mode, what kind of communication happens? Is it unstructured? Is it self-regulatory? Is it informal? Or it is structured and interactive? B, D, C. Okay, instructional communication cannot be informal. A classroom discussion cannot be informal. And because there is curriculum, it also cannot be unstructured. Okay, so the only options remaining are B and D. But nowadays, even in distance education, you have, videos. The third generation of distance education uses ICT, computers, for making its modules electronic and computer based. So it enables communication between learners and teachers, something which is happening right now here. All of you are in different parts of India right now, and still we are having a communication here. So structured and interactive. The concept of proximal development related to educational communication was developed by. Proximal development is a term whose meaning you should know, and that I'll tell you once you tell me the answer of this question. Come on, make a guess. Either you'll go right or you go wrong. There's no other option here. You'll not lose marks. C, D. Anyone for A and B? Okay. So the answer is Vygotsky. This C. C is your answer. Now let's actually talk about the important concept, that is proximal development. What is proximal development? Or rather, zone of proximal development, which is now renamed, just like Bloom's taxonomy was changed in 2001, and it became a little bit different. Similarly, zone of proximal development is now called zone of potential development. It is a term that Lev Vygotsky used to explain the range of development in learners. Now, what is this zone of potential development or proximal development? He said that every individual has two levels of development. A lower level that is attainable under normal circumstances, that if normally they work hard on it, this is the level they will be able to achieve. And upper level that is attainable under the influence of an adult or a capable peer. So if someone teaches them or influences them or guides them, then this is the upper level that is attainable. In between these two zones, the lower level, which they can achieve in normal circumstance, versus an upper level, which they can attain with the guidance or influence of an adult or capable peer. The difference between these two is the zone of potential development. So that this is important because it shows the importance of social influences, especially teaching, on children's cognitive development. So instruction, even as parents, when you give instruction, as teachers, when you give instruction, in society, when adults, when peers teach things to each other, like even a 6-year-old teaching something to a 5-year-old, like when my daughter's cousin, brothers, sisters, when she plays with them, if she plays with them even for 4 hours, she's going to learn a lot of new vocabulary. She learns how to play different new kinds of games because they are elder to her and they know a bit more. So they teach her, then she learns those things faster. That is the zone of potential development. Okay? Clear with this concept? Still with me? Thank you. Okay, next question. Identify the skills promoted by communication. Reading and listening, listening and helping, helping and speaking, speaking and writing. Which two of these are promoted by communication? Which two sets? Yes. So the answer is C, that is reading, listening, speaking and writing. Because listening and speaking happens with oral communication and reading and writing when it comes to written communication. Next, effective communication presupposes. What does it presuppose? Non-alignment, domination, passivity, and understanding. When we say the communication is effective, which of this exists? Understanding, right? Okay. A good communicator begins his/her presentation with complex question, non sequitur, repetitive phrase, and icebreaker. We usually begin with icebreakers because icebreakers help people to, start building trust and connection. What is non sequitur? It is a conclusion or statement that does not logically follow from the previous argument or statement. Just explaining the meaning of the term. Okay, but that's not your answer. The classroom communication should essentially be contrived, empathetic, abstract, non-descriptive. Empathetic, right? Okay, so contrived is false and deliberate rather than natural. Abstract is something not specific. Now, a classroom communication cannot be something not specific. And non-descriptive could compromise the understanding of the learners. Difference between acceptance and non-acceptance of certain stimuli in classroom communication is the basis of what? Differentiation between acceptance and non-acceptance. So deciding what is acceptable and not acceptable in classroom, which stimuli are acceptable and not acceptable, which factor is important for that? The answer is selective attention. Are the students going to pay attention to the content which is being taught? That should determine what kind of stimuli is given in the classroom. Next, classroom communication is a transactional process. I hope you still remember linear, interactive, and transactional, 3 kinds of communications. A teacher does not operate under the assumption that students' responses are purposive, that is, with a specific purpose. You need to find out if it's true or false, and if both of them are true, then if one is an explanation of other. A, C. See, in a classroom, when we teach something, we are following learner objectives. There are specific goals which you need to attain. That's why you are teaching your curriculum, right? So the students' responses cannot be random, which means they are purposive with a specific purpose. And that is why R is false. Of course, A is true because teacher and students can communicate. It's a two-way communication which can happen simultaneously. While the teacher is speaking, someone can raise a hand and say, "Madam, I have a doubt." "Madam, I want to go drink water." Both cases. Okay. So teacher does assume that the responses are purposive because they are with the purpose of learning something specific. To communicate well in the classroom is a natural ability. Effective teaching in the classroom demands knowledge of the communication process. Communication can be learned. The first day a teacher comes in class, their legs might be shaking, their voice might be shaking, and students might throw chalks at them. Let them stand in the class for 3 to 4 months, then they'll be the ones who can throw the duster at the students. Although corporal punishment is no longer legal, so you should not do that. Our professors could have done that. We cannot do that in current times. So communicating is something that can be learned. That means A is false, but R is true. Okay. If you don't know communication process, how are you going to teach? Making good predictions in classroom communication may become difficult. It happens when interactions with students takes place at superficial level. We just discussed 4 levels of communication. A is true, R is false. Both A and R are true. R is the correct explanation. Okay. D and B. So far, two answers. Okay. So if your interactions go beyond superficial, then you can make good predictions. We had a question about predictions. We had a question in which we talked about superficial level and the connection of superficial level with predictions. This question is an extension of that. See, what the questions are never repeated in UGC NET. What is repeated is the concepts. They'll reframe the question in a different form. You should know the basics. Your concept should be clear. The initial messages to students in the classroom by a teacher need not be critical to establish interactions later. More control over the communication process means more control over what the students are learning. Which one is true? Which one is false? Are both true? Do they have a relation? A is false. R is true. D, someone says. Okay. C. Okay. D and C. Two-way.
C.
C and D. Okay. So A is false because initially the teacher needs to establish some sort of rules so that later on there can be interactions and control over the communication process means you can control the way students are learning and understanding. So that is true. But initially it has to be critical so that you can establish interactions later. Because your initial impression as a teacher establishes whether the students are going to respect you, whether they are going to listen to you. If you are not able to leave a lasting impression of a strict teacher or a no-nonsense person on the first day, your future classes are going to be very difficult. At least initially, all those who have taught classes would have experienced that, right? So this is based on that. We believe we know all the aspects of teaching, but once you start solving these questions, you realize that there is we know things, we do things subconsciously, but to bring it into conscious and solve questions, multiple choice questions based on that, takes effort. Iconic production of classroom communication includes email, graphics, telephones, and scripting. Okay, graphics. That's the answer. Because icons means symbols, and the rest three of them talk about words. Okay. This question is about feedback. So because of feedback, classroom communication becomes linear, circular, complete, interactive, and disorganized. Which of this is applicable? A, right? It makes it linear. In linear, there would be no feedback. And again, if it is disorganized also, then there would be no feedback. Because of feedback, things become more organized and complete. Next question. The primary basis of interpersonal power in relation to classroom communication is what kind of power are there in classroom communication? Coercive power, reward power, referent power, legitimate power, and recreational power. Which powers exist when we talk about classroom communication? D. Okay, what are the answers? A. Okay, so see, the answer is A. Coercive power is when the teacher brings the inattentive students or the mischievous students back on track. Reward is when you motivate or encourage the students by saying that you have done good job. My kiddo gets her stars and chocolates and hats and all kinds of smileys from her madam, which makes her feel, oh, today I got star when I wrote ABCD. That's the biggest achievement that she has. Today I made one mistake and I didn't get a star. So reward power is there with teachers. Referent power is the ability to influence, because teachers are, the students put you on a pedestal, they model the teacher, they try to follow the teacher. So that is referent power, the ability to influence. And legitimate power, because you are teacher, you have the authority given to you with the position of the teacher to teach the students. Okay. Recreational is entertainment, and that does not exist when we talk about classroom communication. So the types of interpersonal powers, there are 6 kinds of interpersonal powers. Expert power, someone who has knowledge. In interpersonal communication, 6 kinds of powers exist in not just classroom, in any kind of communication between 2 people or more than 2 people. Expert power is when someone has valuable, unique knowledge. Referent power is when you have the ability to influence other person by empathizing them, understanding them, and then you are able to influence them. Information power is someone who can present things in a logical way, in such a way that the other person is able to understand those things. Okay. Legitimate power, titles like CEO, parent, teacher. Why should I follow what you say? Because I am your mother, is the usual explanation that we have as parents for our kids. Okay, so that is legitimate power. Or because I am the HOD, you do as I say. Reward power is encouraging them, and coercing power is using punishment for non-compliance. These are the 6 kinds of powers that exist in interpersonal communication. Okay. So in classroom, use of communication technology, what does it presuppose? Inattentive audience, luxurious ambience, extrapolation of contents, new forms of expression and application. New forms of expression and application. Okay. Because if the audience is inattentive, then that technology should not be used in the class. And ambience and extrapolation of contents is anyways not affecting teaching. Delayed feedback can happen due to what in a classroom? Semantic noise. Okay. A basic principle of effective classroom communication is that one should adapt dash to the audience. Accent, exterior, message, mannerism. Accent. Previous slide, please. This one. Semantic noise. Semantic is related to words, confusion in words, confusion in understanding meaning. Okay. Message. Message is what you need to adapt. The content of what you are saying. If the other person, that is your students, do not understand what you are saying, accent and mannerism becomes of secondary importance. Key element for effective classroom communication is passivity, negativity, deflection, and advocacy. This I talked about yesterday also. I already gave you the answer yesterday. Advocacy, empathy for students is important for classroom communication. Okay. Let me take the new questions. Learner communication has relatively high potential of challenging teaching as a profession, innovative and creative ideas, methods of evaluation, long-held attitudes. When students talk to you, what can get challenged? Teaching as a profession? Mostly not. What changes is probably your beliefs as a teacher. Okay, long-held attitudes. The quality of the learner's question may potentially challenge tradition and long-held attitudes, which need to be changed to match growing aspirations and requirements of changing times. Okay. Okay, this one. 4 theories. You just need to understand the meaning of this theory. Okay. These are some of the favorite words, especially social constructivism. It believes that human development is socially situated and knowledge is constructed by interaction with each other. Audience marginalization is when a group or a person or something is considered unimportant, insignificant, and not given importance, removed to the side. That's audience marginalization. You don't care for a certain section of people. Ritualistic is when the focus is on interaction or ritual, and it forms the basis of beliefs, thinkings, morality, and culture. And theory of hegemony shows that the ruling class can manipulate the value system. Whatever they say is the truth, and everyone else has to follow the ruling class. That's the theory of hegemony. Okay. So although you already have your answer, the question was which of the following theories can be applied to classroom communication? So the answer is theory of social constructivism. Okay. And then, okay. For an effective classroom communication, at times it is desirable to use the projection technology. Using the projection technology facilitates extensive coverage of course contents. It is a bit tricky. I am warning you in advance. Think again. Why do we use projection technology? Why do we use projectors? What's the purpose of using projectors or multimedia? To cover extensive course or to make things easy to understand? R is true, but R is not the correct explanation of A. The correct explanation could be reaching large number of students, use of multimedia for better understanding. Extensive coverage of course contents may be its advantage, but that's not the main purpose for which we use it in the classroom. Okay, 2 more questions and then we end the session. In the context of classroom teaching, smiles or frowns when used as non-verbal cues. So in class, the teacher says that smiles and frowns will be used as non-verbal cues. So they could be replaced for what? What is their function? Sorry. Give the answer. you would have not thought in the direction in which the answer goes. The answer is substitute function. They can replace yes and no. Smiles and frowns. Okay? They could replace yes and no in the class. So imagine those, circular smileys if you have seen children in playgroups. They have those smileys on a stick. Smiles and frowns could replace yes and no for those children. So that is the substitute function. Okay. I also found this question a bit difficult to understand. So just keep an eye out for this kind of questions. Okay. And the last question. The principles of effective writing, useful for both students and teachers, are stress on hyperbole, liberal use of adjectives, clarity, conciseness, correctness, and use of complex sentences. Out of this, which are the principles of effective writing? Basically, what makes writing effective? C, right? Clarity, conciseness, and correctness. So that was the last question for today.